Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this episode of One-on-One. I'm Martin False. And throughout the years, sometimes I have guests on here that are very esteemed in whatever they decided to do. Doctors, lawyers, judges, district attorneys, senators, you name it, we've had them on. But every now and then, I like to get that person who behind the scenes works for the betterment of others, for charities, for the community, and our guest fits that bill tonight. When we come back from the break, we're going to go way back to his early days and then his South Terrebonne days. Ricky Felio is our guest on One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer.
Years later, I went to visit a friend of mine. Riley said, "Hey, Rick," said, "this guy thought that the guy had burned his hand, and he had it wrapped up, and Riley, we were talking about it. He said, "Yeah, I burned my hand on my lawnmower, a muffler." And he said, "Yeah, but that poor guy that died in that explosion," he thought I died. He said, "I seen you." He was going on the road, and he seen when the house blew up. And then he was backing up because there was a Shell station down there, and they had a payphone. He said, "I seen you. So I seen you when you drove off the roof and you ran." He said, "Buddy," he said, "you were in your underwear. You had some white underwear on, drawers on, and some socks. And you was smoking, and that was on fire. And you didn't go to the first house. You went to the second house. And that was Linda and Larry K. Hutchison. Linda K. and Larry Hutchison. Linda was an RN. She was a nurse. The garage door was open. I went in, banged on the door, and then when she clicked the light on the garage, I'm standing there, just, I could see her just look back. She said, "Rick," what? I said, "It's me, Ricky. My mom's house just blew up. Called my Uncle Ralph and my Aunt Maisie Boudreaux." And then she said, "I'm going to get Larry," and Larry come down. When she closed the door, that it was like looking in a mirror, and it was just, my face was just like wax, it melted, my skin hanging from here, and I was just, a mess. And then so she comes out with a sheet, lays it on the garage floor, they got an ice chest, propped my feet up. Larry called an ambulance. And Linda was giving me first aid as best she could, and she actually saved my life. Mm-hmm. I had a gold chain that was burnt into me, and she had it in her pocket. Anyway, the ambulance came and get me. They went to the Terrebonne General. And when they brought me in there, they couldn't help me really, other than give me some things that.
Burn unit, yeah.
Yeah, but Linda worked for this hand surgeon, and I remember she called him, and he told her to go to West Jefferson burn unit. He had a doctor, Frank DeVincenti. That's the guy you want. He was Vietnam Army doctor. He put people back together. That's what he did. Then they were going to bring a helicopter from Lafayette. They had to get one from Lafayette for some odd reason. But by this time, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, because no one knew where I was. My family started seeing where was I, cause they knew the house blew up, but they didn't know if I was in it or not. Linda called them and started calling people, and then they all came to the emergency room. I'm wide awake. I'm just cooked. The smell of burnt flesh. Just my dad had told me some stuff about Korea, about when he was wounded and blown up with a mortar and stuff. When I smelled it, I was like, I know what that's what it smells like. So hey, look, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. So I said, "There's no traffic. Put me in the ambulance. Let's go." I'm coming out of I'm in shock now, but I'm starting to feel some serious pain. My Uncle Raymond and I, my param, they got an ambulance. We hauled over there. And I don't remember being in the emergency room, but they had a team waiting on me.
How old were you?
I was 30.
Yeah.
I was in football shape at 30 because I was trained offshore. I had a heavy bag. I was 10 years old. Mr. Smitty had a boxing club, a Smitty Houma boxing club or whatever, right by Holy Rosary Church. Next door, they had a building there. So I'd walk at 10 years old, walk across Deggville Bridge and go at school nights, come back at 9 o'clock at night or 10, and I boxed then. And so I always had a heavy bag. The first thing I remember at West Jefferson Hospital at the burn unit was they lifted me up with some hydraulic thing or whatever and set me around like about a big tub. And there were people all around me. And I think it was the tub, and I kept wanting to see what they were doing. I kept feeling some things. Just, I was hurting big time. And I lifted up my hand. When I lifted up my hand, I seen my hand was just all burned. All this is rebuilt.
Yeah.
Everything is just rebuilt. Mm-hmm. So, and then I knew this wasn't a dream. This was happening. I was in intensive care for about 7 weeks. The first they told my mom and my girlfriend at the time was Deetsa Thibodeau, who was there all the time with me. She moved to New Orleans, her and my mom, the department, to be with me. I wouldn't be doing as good as I was without Deetsa. She was a little general. First, Dr. Deven told my family, he said, listen, if he lives 72 hours, that's the most critical part. He's burnt 90%. If he lives 72 hours, then I'll give him 10%.
Wow.
Yeah.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
But I was in shape, I was working out all the time. Mm-hmm. And then my lungs wouldn't burn. Working out, boxing, stretching, and I got into martial arts. Well, a friend of mine, when I moved to Shreveport with a friend of mine, Jim Williams Tinker, he was a Golden Glove boxer. We had a bag, and we'd work out all the time. And then when I was working with Mason Petroleum, I had a friend that worked for him, his kid that worked for him.
So you think that saved your life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he was in martial arts. He was a second degree in Taekwondo. So we were trained all the time. It was production. We had a lot of time. And we would stretch, We would work out 2 hours a day. So with burns, everything wants to contract. And my lungs wasn't burnt. The back of my throat was burnt. So I stayed in intensive care, and I was in they call a clinitron bed. And there was a bed that moves up and down. It's filled with sand, and there's a compressor on the side of it and pushes air through it, and you're moving the whole time, because it's relieving the pressure that's on your burn, because I had so much area that was burned. And then I was running fever, 105, 106. They put me in ice packs, and the pain was, was intense, to say the least. But
when did you know that you'd pulled through, that it was going to be okay?
Oh, it was months. Yeah, they told my family I was going to be in there for 9 months to a year.
Wow.
Yeah. The biggest part of it, like I said, was my mom. You would see everybody had face masks on. You just see their eyes, and you see the wet stains of my mom. That was that was the worst part. Mentally, that was just knowing that.
What did they say?
Because I took care of my family since I was 15.
You were independent.
Yeah. I had a little job, and my dad and mom didn't have money, and my little sisters and stuff and all. Mm-hmm. I paid my little sister Susan's wedding. All my little nieces, my cousins were all getting married, and they had these nice weddings. And
you still take care of people.
Yeah, but that's just
in your blood.
I remember my little sister had to sign for Susan to get married because she was young. And
that's just like Sue.
Yeah, it was. And so,
right, Sue?
So I wanted to have a good wedding. So and I was a welder helper back then. But at McDermott, you were building all these pipelines, and you would you can go work as long as you want. I spent 7 weeks. I think it was 7 weeks straight offshore to save enough money to throw a wedding. Actually, I hired Richard Tubes, Frank Ball.
Wow.
And I had Madonna. I hired them to be the band.
Timmy was there too?
Yeah, Timmy was there too. And then I gave Billy Stark $20, I think. He was in Nichols then, to go play an organ, a couple of songs at the church. And Donna Hutchison, another $20. And we had it at East Recreation Center. And she had she had a good wedding. But anyway. And that was on me when I was burnt. Just, if I didn't make it, what was going to happen?
But Mike represented you, right?
Yeah, Mike represented me. What it was, I found out later that they didn't have the smell of the gas.
Yeah.
So when I couldn't smell it. And actually, that lighter saved my life. Because if I wouldn't have struck the lighter, if I'd have went to sleep, I'd have died of asphyxiation. Or
You hit a light switch.
if the thermostat would have clicked on, and it got to any of the pilot lights and everything else, and I'd have been, out of it. And fortunately, I was by myself in that house, But the recovery was, and I was the only one for a long period of time. I think it was 7 weeks in intensive care. I couldn't sleep, and they would come in. I always had a nurse at my bedside, sitting there with charting. Machines, I'm hooked up to all machines. I got a feeding tube. Can't do anything for myself. My hands are burned. I can't close. I'm just pure pain. And they would come in and they would tie me down. They would gauze and strap me in different positions because they didn't want my joints to freeze up, and they wanted to stretch out as much as they could. One of the worst parts, my head blew up like a basketball. But my mouth had like this, just it contracted. And they would come in at night and they would put these hooks in my mouth, and it was like a hard plastic. Put them in there, and it had a ratchet. You want to ratchet and pull my mouth out. Just stretch it and stretch it.
God, as I'm listening to you, you've told me this before, but I wanted the audience to hear, because your ability to overcome, to me, but you didn't just overcome. You were very successful. You were very, you gave back to the community in so many ways. You didn't let it stop you.
No. When you lay it down like that, listen, you're there and you're wondering what you're going to do. And of course, like I said, my family was always involved in giving and stuff, but that's...
You had time to reflect.
But you do, until it was like it was being in a horror show, because you would hear screams and hollering, and I didn't know where it was from. I was in the condensed care by myself, but there was other patients that was on there. And then once they started doing surgeries on me, they started that to clean. I would go into what's called the scrub room, and that's where the pain was.
Yeah.
That's where just, why those screams, why people were screaming.
There's no doubt.
And then I was burnt 90%, so they would always do like an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and they would take a Narcil debrier, which is a piece of stainless steel shaped like a hockey stick, and then they would just scrape you. And then they would just take the brushes out and brush your whole body.
Wow.
And I would call it like white pain. I would just chew on a wash rag and bite so I wouldn't break my teeth, and just bite down, and I'd go through 2 wash rags.
I wanted people to hear, because I want them, when they see you at these functions, to understand that, hey, you paid your dues.
Yeah, you just learn a lot about yourself, man. You learn about, you go 2 ways on this thing. You're going to make up your mind to be the best you can be.
Right.
Or not. And then, so when the therapy started, you go to the scrub room and just, you go through that. That's coming. It's just, they give you a little shot of Demerol, but that was like taking a baby aspirin for an amputation. You just brace yourself. Yeah, you're going to get whipped. You're going to get a butt whipping.
Get used to the routine.
Yep, you were going to get a butt whipping in the most horrific pain you could imagine.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
When you're burnt, everything wants to shrivel back up, so everything wants to go back. So my hands, this was it. This is the most I can do with my hands. So they would just bend, and I would bend them or whatever, and then, you go through that, you keep going, and for months on months. I was there 4 months, which was fast, because they would, originally told me I would be there 9 months. My family didn't tell me, 9 months to a year. And eventually I got better. I wasn't able to walk, so now I started walking. I had to teach me how to walk. I had to teach me how to do everything.
You were motivated.
Yeah, and then, what motivated me one day, I'm working out with Dory and doing some pull-ups and, with this machinery, with some pulleys. And Dory tells me, she says, listen, Rick, she says, I got another client I have to see, another patient I have to see. and I have to bring her in here. Would you mind? I said, no. She said, you're doing great. I was kind of the golden boy. I wouldn't give him any trouble. I wouldn't scream. I would just go through it, just do it, get it over with. And she said, but she's burnt. She's really burnt. And I'm like, no. I'm burnt. Look at me. Yeah. No. Well, when that little girl, Brandy, walked in, 9 years old, she didn't have any lips, any ears, nubs for fingers. And I'm like, well. So.
Yeah, I guess you almost considered yourself lucky at that
Yeah,
point.
that was,
Wow.
yeah. Sort of,
So, man, that's a,
it was sort of my worst day and was my best day.
yeah.
What
motivation for
Because
people.
when they wheeled me back in my room, I just lost it. I mean, I just lost it. And one of the techs came by, and she wouldn't get all the nurses because I was doing so great. Dory came back up. They said, "What's wrong? What is?" I'm like, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I said, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm 30 years old, and in 30 years, I did a lot of living. I mean, a lot of living, really.
And then a 9-year-old.
But a 9-year-old who's not going to know a lot of things, and then maybe she will, but it was just that, I played football, the homecoming court, did all kinds of things, and had relationships and stuff like this. And that little girl, and for that day right there, it's like, hey, I'm going to start doing things on my own because I couldn't feed myself at the time. My hands were, there were a lot of things I couldn't do, and I told them, look, this is what I want to do, whatever it is, how messy it is, I'm going to feed myself. I'm going to, we're going to work with it. And Dory was a top-notch, physical therapist and occupational therapist. So what they did, forks would come with gauze about this thick to where I could wrap my hands around. It was messy now, but I was doing it. Put gloves on, I go to the bathroom, I couldn't take care of myself. But one of the things that they would do too, they would shave me. The tech brought in a shaving kit, put it on a tray, and with water and shaving lotion and this and that and all. And the razor had a great gauze on it to where I could just, it was bloody. But she flipped the mirror up on the tray and laughed. She said, you got it, Mr. Ricky? You got it? I said, yeah, sure, Dawn, yeah. Well, I never realized it, but I never seen my face. I'm looking at my body. They said early on I asked for a mirror, but I was out of it, and I didn't ask again. But I had never seen my face. I didn't know what my face looked like. And I know the pain that I'm in. I know that what they did to my face, what they were doing work on my face. And then, so it took me forever, Martin, to creep up on that mirror. Yeah. It started out in my head and just kind of creeped up and then looked at it and just, I can live with this. I can just look at myself and say, you can live with this, buddy. You're good. You're good.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.